I've been thinking about something lately that I believe might be sitting heavy on your heart too. There's this quiet ache that lives in so many of us, this feeling that we're supposed to be further along than we are, that somehow we missed a turn somewhere, and now we're watching everyone else move forward while we're still trying to figure out which direction to face. And I want you to know that I see you, right where you are, and there's nothing broken about the season you're standing in. See, we've been taught to measure spiritual growth like we measure everything else in this world, like it's supposed to follow some kind of linear path, like there should be visible progress reports and quarterly reviews with God. But that's never been how transformation works in the kingdom. Jesus spent 30 years in obscurity before 3 years of ministry. And if God needed that much preparation time for his own son, why do we think our hidden seasons are wasted? I think about the woman at the well in John chapter 4, how she came in the heat of the day to avoid the crowds, carrying the weight of 5 failed marriages and a current relationship that everyone whispered about. She wasn't looking for a spiritual upgrade that day. She was just trying to get water and get home before anyone could make her feel smaller than she already felt. But Jesus met her there, not in the synagogue, not during a revival meeting, not when she had her life cleaned up and her testimony polished. He met her in her avoidance, in her shame, in the middle of her ordinary, broken afternoon. And here's what moves me about that encounter. He didn't start by telling her everything she needed to fix. He started by asking her for a drink, by making himself vulnerable to her service, by treating her like she had something valuable to offer before she ever confessed a single thing. The upgrade she experienced that day wasn't about her becoming someone different. It was about her discovering who she'd always been underneath the labels and the shame. You see, I think we've gotten spiritual transformation backwards. We think it's about addition, about acquiring more faith, more knowledge, more discipline, more fruit, more anointing, more breakthrough. But what if the upgrade you've been waiting for is actually about subtraction? What if it's about removing the layers of performance and pretending and people-pleasing that you've wrapped around your true self like armor? What if it's about unlearning the lies you believed about your worth instead of trying to earn enough gold stars to finally feel valuable? Paul writes in 2 Corinthians 3 verse 18 that we're being transformed into Christ's image with ever-increasing glory, and that transformation comes from the Lord, who is the Spirit. Notice he doesn't say we transform ourselves through sheer determination. He says we're being transformed, present, continuous, an ongoing work that isn't dependent on our ability to hold it all together. I've watched too many beautiful souls exhaust themselves trying to manufacture spiritual growth like it's a product they can produce through the right combination of early mornings and Bible reading plans and worship playlists. And listen, there's nothing wrong with spiritual disciplines, but when they become the measuring stick we beat ourselves with, when they become one more way we prove we're not enough, they've missed their purpose entirely. The upgrade you're looking for isn't found in doing more. It's found in receiving more of what's already been given. Think about the Israelites in the wilderness, how God fed them with manna every single morning, fresh provision for that day's need. They couldn't stockpile it, couldn't save it up for tomorrow, couldn't create a surplus that would make them feel secure. They had to trust that what came today would be enough, and that tomorrow would bring its own supply. That kind of daily dependence terrified them, and honestly, it terrifies us too. We want to feel further ahead, want to have our spiritual lives figured out enough that we don't have to keep coming back to God like beginners every single morning. But maybe being a beginner every morning is exactly where intimacy lives. Maybe that daily need, that daily reaching, that daily "I can't do this without you" is the relationship God's been inviting us into all along. I wonder if you've been waiting for a moment when you finally feel qualified, when you finally feel ready, when you finally feel like you've got enough faith to step into what God's been calling you toward. And meanwhile, He's been waiting for you to step forward with exactly the faith you have right now, even if it feels small, even if it feels insufficient, even if it feels like 5 loaves and 2 fish in the face of 5,000 hungry people. In Matthew 14, when the disciples brought Jesus that little boy's lunch, they weren't offering it as a solution. They were basically saying, this is all we've got, and we know it's not enough, but here it is anyway. And Jesus didn't shame them for the insufficiency. He blessed what they brought, broke it open, and fed everyone with enough left over to fill 12 baskets. But here's the detail that wrecks me every time. The multiplication didn't happen in their hands. It happened as they gave it away, as they moved in obedience even though the math didn't make sense. The upgrade you're experiencing right now might not feel like upgrade at all. It might feel like everything is falling apart, like the structures you built your life on are crumbling, like the people you thought would be there forever have walked away. But what if God isn't dismantling your life? What if He's dismantling your false self, the version of you that learned to survive by being what others needed instead of being who you actually are? Job lost everything, every single external marker of blessing and favor, and in the ash heap of his grief, he said something that we often miss in our rush to get to the restoration part of his story. He said in Job 13 verse 15, "Though he slay me, yet will I trust him." That's not toxic positivity or spiritual bypassing. That's a man who's discovered that his relationship with God isn't contingent on his circumstances looking a certain way. The upgrade isn't about your life getting easier. It's about your foundation getting deeper, about your roots growing down into soil that can't be shaken no matter what storms come. I know there are things you've been praying for that haven't come yet. Relationships that haven't healed, doors that haven't opened, breakthroughs that haven't broken through. And I know how that waiting can make you question everything, can make you wonder if God's even listening, if you missed His voice somehow, if you're doing something wrong that's blocking the answer. But what if the waiting itself is the answer? What if God isn't withholding what you've asked for, but protecting you while He prepares you for the weight of what you've been asking for? David was anointed king as a teenager, but he didn't wear the crown until he was 30 years old. 15 years or more of waiting, of running, of hiding in caves, of being hunted by the very king he'd been anointed to replace. And in those wilderness years, when it looked like the promise would never come to pass, God was doing something in David's character that would determine how he would carry the kingdom once he finally received it. The upgrade you're experiencing right now is doing the same thing in you. It's building capacity in you for what's coming, even when what's coming isn't visible yet. It's teaching you how to worship in the cave so that you'll know how to worship on the throne. It's showing you your identity isn't found in what you achieve, in whose you are. Can I tell you something that might lift some of the pressure you've been carrying? You're not behind. I know it feels like you are. I know you look around and see people who seem further along in their faith, their families, their finances, their purpose. But God isn't writing your story according to anyone else's timeline. He's writing it according to what you specifically need to become who you were created to be. And some of what you need can only be learned in the slow seasons, in the seasons when nothing seems to be happening on the surface, but everything is shifting underground. Think about how a seed works, how it has to break open in the darkness of the soil before anything green can push through into the light. If you dug it up too early to check on its progress, you'd destroy the very process that was bringing it to life. Your hidden season isn't evidence of delay, it's evidence of development. Jesus said in John 12, verse 24, "Unless a grain of wheat falls to the ground and dies, it remains only a single seed. But if it dies, it produces many seeds." There's a death that has to happen before there can be multiplication, a death to the old ways of measuring your worth, a death to the need for constant validation, a death to the version of yourself that you thought you had to be. And that death can feel like loss, can feel like God is taking things away from you. But He's not taking things away. He's making room for something new that couldn't grow in the same space as the old. I've been reading through the Psalms lately, and I'm struck by how honest David was with God. He didn't sanitize his emotions or dress up his doubts in religious language. He said things like, "How long, Lord, will you forget me forever?" Or, "Why do you hide your face from me?" But then, often in the very same psalm, he'd turn and say, "Yet I will hope in you," or, "But you, Lord, are a shield around me."
He held both the ache and the trust at the same time, and God called him a man after his own heart. Not because David never struggled, but because David brought his struggle into the relationship instead of pretending it wasn't there. Maybe the upgrade isn't about reaching a place where you never doubt anymore. Maybe it's about learning to bring your doubt to the Father instead of letting it drive you away from Him. Maybe it's about discovering that your questions don't disqualify you from His presence. They actually invite a deeper level of honesty that He's been longing for all along. See, God's not intimidated by your humanity. He created it, dwells within it, redeemed it at the highest cost imaginable. When Jesus walked the earth, He got tired, He got hungry, He wept at the grave of His friend, He sweat blood in the garden facing what was coming. He didn't bypass human experience, He entered fully into it so that we'd know we're not alone in ours. The writer of Hebrews tells us we don't have a high priest who's unable